Good evening and welcome to the Gospel Truth. I'm Brother Alan Jackson, bringing to you spiritual songs and hymns and the power of the spoken word of God. First of all, giving thanks to God Almighty for blessing me with this another outpouring of his tender love and mercy, and that he's allowed me once again to be on this time side of life and to have this another blessed privilege to come to you in his name by way of this television medium and to bring to you another message from his holy and divine word. And as I always do, I want to continue to express my appreciation and my gratitude to the production staff for their diligent service. And it's my prayer that God will continue to bless each of them with those things that he knows that they are standing in need of as well. And I'm praying on your behalf as participant observers. It's my prayer that God will continue to bless you and your family members with those things that you are standing in need of as well. And then, of course, I am encouraging you to pray on my behalf because I'm also standing in need of prayer. And it's only God who can provide me with those things that I am standing in need of. This evening, we're going to continue with our Memphis lectures. However, this evening, in the interest of time, we will forego our prayer list and also our public service announcements. I do want to make mention on the prayer list that we are praying on behalf of Urana Noble's Booth family. And we're praying on behalf of Jessica and Rochelle and Shantae, and also Frank Jr., Warren, Linda, and Eva. It's our prayer that God will comfort the family during this time of our bereavement. And just remember, you can write to us to P.O. Box 3944, Berkeley, California, 94703, and you can send your prayer requests. Or you can call the prayer line at 510-848-8843, and there you can list the names of those that you want listed to the prayer list. Or you can raise a Bible question, and we will answer that for you on the air. We want to also add Bertha Young and Roy Edmondson Sr. to the prayer list. I also want to remind you that October 24th is the last day to vote. So now, without any further remarks, Brother Johnathan Morrison from Dallas, Texas.
If you know that Jesus will fix it, why don't you say amen one more time? Repeat after me. God is good all the time. And all the time, God is surely good. Certainly we need not pause to give thanks to the lectureship committee for doing a tremendous job in putting this lectureship together. And certainly I'm appreciative to the lectureship committee, particularly the chair this year, Minister Holly, for the invitation and the opportunity to come and to be a part of this great lectureship. Certainly we've been blessed already, haven't we? I don't know about you, but I'm trying to be an elephant. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but yeah, trying to be an elephant. We thank Brother Bradshaw for doing a tremendous job, and I know we're going to be blessed greatly by those who will shortly come before me. Certainly want to say it's good to see the many Dallas area ministers who are here. We share a great camaraderie in Dallas, many of us, and it's always good to look out and to see their bright faces. Many of you have asked about my father. He's doing well. About this time last year, he suffered a heart attack. Many of you know that, but he's fully recovered. God has blessed him, and he's doing well, and certainly he sends his love and his regards. Also happy to have one of my elders and his wife with us, Elder Hodges and Sister Hodges. Where are you? There they are. Just wave your hand. Amen. Glad to have them here as well. I know if I don't get any amens, I'm going to get at least two. Yeah. If you have your Bible, turn with me to Genesis chapter number 17. Genesis chapter number 17. we will begin our reading from this assigned chapter at verse number 17 for the sake and in the interest of time. We will begin at verse number 17 and we will conclude our reading at verse number 21. Genesis chapter number 17. We will conclude our reading at verse number 21, beginning at verse number 17. If you have it, say amen. 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 Hear the Spirit. There the text says, Then Abraham fell upon his face and laughed and said in his heart, Shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, that is 90 years old, bear a son? And Abraham said unto God, Oh, that Ishmael might live before thee. And God said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he begat, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac. With Sarah shall bear unto thee a son, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this said time next year. For just a few moments, I want to share a thought with you from this text and the assigned subject. At 99, God says it's time. Ishmael is not the one. Someone has well said that the hardest part of living by faith is waiting on God. For that very reason, it is often in the fight between our flesh and our faith that our destiny can be delayed, our circumstances complicated, and God's stream of resources can be temporarily rerouted. But when we understand that God's ways are not our ways, that his thoughts are not our thoughts, we realize that waiting is not just an inconvenient exercise to get what we want, but rather waiting is the experience of becoming what God wants us to be. Such is the case with the couple that is central to our text this afternoon, Abram and his wife Sarah. Without belaboring the details that you've already heard today, you need to remember, however, that in Genesis chapter number 12, God introduced what is regarded as the Abrahamic covenant. And I venture to say that of all of the promises of God that were found and included in that covenant, that promise to Abram, the promise of particular interest was the assurance of a son who would be his heir and the bloodline successor to his legacy. But when we find Abram in chapter 17, time has ticked by. The birthdays have tallied up, and the impatience that comes with 24 years of waiting on God have trickled in. And as you well know, a momentary lapse in Abram's judgment produced a problem, say amen if you can, named Ishmael, the son he fathered with Hagar, who was the handmaiden and soon to be rival of his wife, Sarah. But it's at that point when the rivalry between Sarah and Hagar seemed to have subsided, when Ishmael is becoming and moving into his transition to manhood, and Abram is enjoying that blessing that comes as a father, that God breaks his silence in the drama that resembled the Real Housewives of Canaan. Just when things were starting to calm down, the drama starts all over again. And at 99, God says it's time. And it's in Abram's experience with God at 99 that we see three things, and I'm going to get out of your way. Number one, we see a peculiar response to a promise. Not only do we see a peculiar response to a promise, but we see a passionate request for partiality. And after we look at Abram's passionate request for partiality, we see a positive reaffirmation of prosperity. But number one, I want us to take a minute to look at this peculiar response to a promise. I said Abraham was about to find out in a very real way that God will expose man's insufficiency to reveal his own sufficiency. It was approximately 24 years ago in the days of Abraham and Sarah's virility and their biological stamina that God made them this promise. But now Abraham was over the hill and he was picking up steam quickly. I mean to let Paul tell it, by this point Abraham's body and Sarah's womb were dead according to Romans 4 verse number 19, and the ability to produce life had left him. So Abraham couldn't do anything if he wanted to. Y'all ain't hearing what I'm saying. He said he couldn't do anything if he wanted to. And Sarah was at a point where she would rather make him a sandwich than y'all ain't gotta say nothing. Y'all ain't gotta say nothing. Abraham said, God, you gotta understand this thing. Last anniversary, okay, all right. But at 99, God told Abraham that he and Sarah would conceive and have a son. And to that, the text says in verse number 17 that Abraham fell upon his face and laughed, and he said, in his heart shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old, and shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear a son? In other words, Abraham realized how outrageous and how outlandish God's promise was, and he laughed because he didn't know what else to do. But he did know that if God said it, it had to come to pass. In hope against hope, he believed that while it was impossible operating in the natural, he served a God who operated in the supernatural. And if God said it, it had to come to pass. And so he did all he could do. He laughed. But I need you to see that Abraham's laugh was not simply a reflection of unbelief. It was also a realization that God was unbelievable. And so in his head, Abraham says, God, my best years are behind me. I told you last anniversary, I embarrassed myself. My body is dead. Sarah's body is dead. But if anybody can bring us back to life, I know you can. Oh my God, I don't know how you feel about it, but I'm glad to know that we serve a God who's in the business of bringing dead things back to life again. Oh my God, I said we serve a God who can speak to our dead places and our dead issues and our dead circumstances and bring them back to life for his glory and for our good. So he shows us a peculiar response to a promise. Then we see a passionate request for partiality. See Abraham again. From all indications, God's apparent silence regarding this issue for the past 13 years has created an ease and a gradual acceptance of Ishmael as the substitute to the promise. For 13 years, Abraham has invested himself in Ishmael in anticipation of him one day inheriting the promises of the covenant. But now God's word turns his world upside down. If I had time in another 30 minutes, I'd tell you that one word from God can turn your plans upside down. So in verse number 18, the text tells us that in a moment of paternal panic and parental postulation, Abraham offers a passionate proposition. Abraham begs of God, and all that is God, Abraham asks God a question. Abraham begs of God, oh, somebody say, oh, I'm begging you, I'm pleading you that Ishmael might live before thee, that Ishmael might live under your covenant blessings. But to that, God says no, or some translations say yeah, but the idea here is that Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with the seed after him. In other words, God says, listen, Broham, no, I can't let it go down like that. I gotta hold out the way I started out. If I fulfill my covenant on your terms, it's no longer my covenant. Somebody might give you credit for my work, and salvation and justification can't work that way. You gotta understand, Abraham, that Ishmael is a work of your flesh, but Isaac will be the work of your faith. Ishmael is the son of passion, but Isaac will be the son of my promise. Ishmael is the son of your humanity, but Isaac will be the son of my holiness. Ishmael satisfied your greed, but Isaac will serve to my glory. Ishmael was born out of your impatience, but Isaac will be born out of your impotence. Ishmael is your move, but Isaac will be my miracle. I'm going to honor what I promised, not what you produce. Listen, all I'm saying is that when God's plans don't line up with your plot, and when your plot don't line up with God's plans, sometimes God gotta say no. But you can still rejoice, you can still have peace, you can still be assured even when God says no, because all that means is that God has already hatched a plan that's better than yours. But in order for your plan to succeed, every now and again, but for God's plan to succeed every now and again, your plan's got to be sidetracked. God's not saying no just to say no. He's saying no because he's trying to set you up for his yes. I know I'm talking to somebody in the house who already planned to be in good health by now, but you still sick. You planned on having a fat chicken account by now, but you still flat broke. Barely made it to Memphis. You planned to be in a relationship by now, but you still eating dinner by yourself. You plan to be further along in your career, but you're still clocking in on that 9 to 5. You applied for the job and they didn't even think enough of you to return your phone call. You thought you'd have a mega church by now, but more folk than left that have come in. But that's all right. God is not saying no. He's saying yes to the plan that he's already set in motion. God's no is setting us up for his yes. Amen. Finally, I'm going to give you some time back. We see a positive reaffirmation of prosperity. Finally, the covenant of grace is promised to Isaac, the son of promise. The text says in verse number 21, but my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year. Listen, make no mistake about it. God is emphatically clear that spiritual blessings, the covenant blessings, would only come through Isaac, but Ishmael would still become a great nation. Yeah. Yes, sir. The God of mercy, somebody say mercy. Mercy. The God of mercy would respect Abraham's love for Ishmael, his son. But more intentionally, he would honor his promise to Hagar. Text says in verse number 20, and as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him and will make him fruitful and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. Now listen, in order to appreciate the practical and theological significance of how Ishmael's blessings relates to us, we flash back to the circumstances surrounding his name in chapter 16, verses 1 through 12. Now, not long after Ishmael was born, his mother Hagar quickly went from servant girl to drama queen. She became a diva and started a beef with Sarah, who was a drama queen herself. Y'all ain't gotta say that. And it was that beef that resulted in Hagar fleeing and running away. When we follow her trail, we find her and she's disheveled, she's distressed, depressed, and in despair, but with nobody to blame but herself. And the angel came to her at a spring in the desert and promised her son prosperity and named the boy Ishmael, which means God hears. But the question that ignites our intrigue is, what did God hear? The text says that God heard her despair and cries over the mess that she helped to create herself. And so in chapter 17, when God says, I'm going to bless Ishmael and make him fruitful, it's as if God's saying, I've heard your distress and I'm going to bless your mess. You created this hardship with Sarah, but I'm going to still honor you. Y'all don't understand what I'm saying. That's a word for somebody in the house. Everybody here, everybody under the sound of my voice has an Ishmael or two in their lives. Your Ishmael may not look like my Ishmael, and your Ishmael might be more hush-hush than my Ishmael. Your Ishmael may be more politically correct or culturally acceptable than mine, but everybody's got an Ishmael. But I thought I'd tell you on the way to my seat that God hasn't given up on you just because you have an Ishmael. God's not through with you yet. God has a way of taking the Ishmael thoughts in your life and making them fruitful to his name and his glory and his honor. By blessing Ishmael, God says to us, yes, you've made some mistakes. But that does not disqualify you from the blessings of God and being fruitful for him. He can forgive us our Ishmaels. He can even bless our Ishmaels. Because with God, the best is yet to come. So that's a word for anybody who's ever had to sit in the cesspool of the mess that they made. God hears your despair. God hears your cry, and your best days, as bad as it may be, are yet to come.
Enjoy it. It's one of the favorites. Everywhere I go, people make me sing this one, so I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Jesus is love. Help me, oh children. Whatever